Nick Dubois.
Mr. Speaker, may I first apologise to the House for being absent for some 90 minutes during this debate, and I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker, for you calling me. I would like to make some comments, but first outline my support entirely for this bill, the direction of the bill, and its aims and its objectives. I would, however, as the Minister knows from some of our earlier conversations, would like to press him on one or two matters and ask for his thoughts to go perhaps a little bit further. Let us start from the premise that the reality is in many boroughs across, many districts across the country, it is frankly harder to get a library card than it is to exercise your franchise. And this is a state of affairs that has left us open to the possibility of fraudulent use as a result of being on the electoral register when you are not entitled to be. Quite right. Indeed, sometimes one is even encouraged to do it when a council employee may simply knock on your door between certain months of the year and take down your details without any requirement to prove your qualification or your identification.
Will my friend give way?
I will give way, yes.
Thank you, my friend, for giving way. Does my friend agree with me? But one of the major problems is when you find that you go to a home and you have the previous occupants on the electoral register, the new occupants on the electoral register, and if they've moved again, the third occupants on the electoral register, which has never been corrected, and this will remedy that.
Indeed, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising that point. He anticipates one or two points I will be making later on, time permitting, so I will return to that. There has been some suggestion that there is limited evidence of fraud. Some members opposite have said there is no evidence of fraud. But I would like to remind the House that last year I carried out a sample of 100 people who had been to my constituency, who were seeking leave to remain, who had absolutely no right to vote in this country. And I took a random sample of 100 last year, of which 21 were on the electoral roll. I repeated that exercise this year and took the latest 100 cases and found a similar number of people with no right to vote in this country actually on the electoral roll. Now, I do accept... I will give way.
Does my honourable friend think that actually one of the reasons is a piece of paper comes through the door, it looks official, they feel that they should actually end up by replying to it, and that's the reason why they do. So what doesn't happen is that they don't actually take it. They think they're being incredibly good and they're behaving themselves, but in reality they're filling in a piece of paper when they shouldn't be filling in a piece of paper in the first place.
My honourable friend has far more experience of this than me, and I believe there are a multitude of reasons, that included. I do not believe it is all about fraudulent intent, but it can lead to someone exercising their franchise when they have absolutely no right to do so. It is clear, and it has been raised, that some people deliberately seek to get on the electoral register when they have no right to, also to improve their credit, chances of raising credit. The fact is, though, the door is open for them to do that, and we have to slam that door shut. So I welcome the... I will give way.
I can certainly sympathise with the argument the honourable gentleman's advancing. Would he recognise the experience I had recently of inquiring of a female voter whether I could speak to the other two females in the House to be told they were aged 6 and 4?
I have not come across that myself, but I am afraid shocked to hear it, but frankly not surprised, and I'm grateful he drew it to my attention. Our system, Mr. Speaker, essentially currently depends on trust, and unsurprisingly, that trust can and will be broken. Therefore, let me be clear, the use of the national insurance numbers and the individual registration is a massive step forward, and I look forward to seeing those implemented as soon as possible. And I will come to the question of timing shortly. However, as having reviewed the bill, the proposals, I would like to raise 4 points for the Minister, if he could be grateful to respond to those, or at least take them into consideration and respond at a future date. First, touching on the question of the coordinated online record of electors, which does obviously present the possibility that people can move and remain on a multiple of registers. And given we've heard of the high transient nature of the population, this is an ever-increasing situation. Now, I am not a great fan of the database state. I accept that. But I would like to know what the Minister's proposals are to minimise and deal with this particular problem. Without such a record, or a record, there will be no central mechanism as far as I can tell, and I'd welcome his comments on that. Under the current electoral system, signing up for a postal vote, as we know, is now easier and does allow for the potential of use of false names, and indeed that's without exercising the vote, without going to the polling station. We will see some improvement. There is no question of that. However, the way that the bill is proposed at the moment, the timetabling means that effectively, with many of the key elements, such as individual registration not being in place until 2014, with the 2 years it will take for individuals to drop off the register, the 2015 general election will be fought fundamentally using the same register, with an increased propensity for it not being as clean a register as we would like. What I am trying to understand is, why are we not trying to focus on the 2015 election? And I realise Minister's been criticised for bringing this fast enough as it is, but I'm trying to understand what the trade-off is, that we're not seeking to do that for the next general election, and I would welcome his comments on that. On the question of the extension of the election period to 25 days, which I, like many in this House, welcome, if I have read the proposals correctly, nevertheless there is a period of up to 6 days before the general election when postal votes can be applied for. And does this not present some demanding challenges for electoral returning officers, who, in Enfield, I am happy to say we have one of the best, in actually verifying those records? And if there was a case of organised fraud of postal voting, would that not present an even tougher challenge? Now, while this bill proposes to deal with fraudulent entries on the electoral register, very little is being done to deal with the growing problem of personation, the act essentially of turning up at the polling station using someone else's details and being given a ballot paper. We have already heard how the member for Mitcham and Morden could actually appear as Elvis Presley, and we heard it rather characteristically and entertainingly described by member for Peterborough. But the reality, however implausible that is, the reality is it is highly possible if Elvis Presley was on the register in the first place. So I would like to ask the Minister to expand further on his reasons for not considering a form of voter identification being required at the polling station. Now, we did hear, of course, rather somewhat obviously from members opposite, that the answer was that their favoured identity card scheme. Well, of course, as we know, that is not necessary. It has not been the case in Northern Ireland. There are perfectly acceptable forms available, and even if someone does not have identification, then is it possible, as it is in Northern Ireland, to obtain an electoral registration identity card. I was particularly delighted, and therefore somewhat confused as to why the government will not pursue this further, that the chair of the Electoral Commission, Jenny Watson, who has been calling for a voter identification at polling stations since 10,010, has urged for this to be considered to help us, as she says, be sure our voting system is safe. I understand some of the objections might be that this is a step change too far and may threaten voter turnout. However, I would say that within 2 years of it being introduced in Northern Ireland, the turnout was in fact up to 62.9%, which was slightly higher than, I believe, the average UK general election. I would ask that the Minister, if he could consider that matter and share his thoughts with us. Let me be clear, however, that this bill is long overdue. It is extremely welcome. It does have my full support. But as I would say, Mr. Speaker, I would be very grateful if I could offer it even greater support with the consideration of some of these amendments so that we can have full confidence in the register of voters.
Yeah.